Evening. Welcome to this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show. I hope that you all have had a great day. We have one more day until the weekend. I don't know what the weekend means for you, but I think I'm going to perhaps take a chance and get out and go to a park. That's about all I am willing to do during these Rona times. For all of you who will be catching this on the replay, thank you so much for being a supporter of the Angela Ray Show. And for all of my live viewers, go ahead and slide into the comments. Often I ask you to let me know where you are watching from. Earlier this week, when we were preparing for National Chicken Wing Week, I asked you to share your favorite flavor, but I think I'll do something a little bit different today in honor of Congressman John Lewis. I would love for you to slide into the comments once you get on the broadcast and share with me your favorite memory of the late congressman, whether that is something that you saw in person on television, whether it's a quote that he is known for, or just his humble spirit. Again, when you get onto the broadcast live, for all of you who will be watching live, go ahead and slide into those comments and share with me your favorite Congressman John Lewis memory. Of course, this is Divine Nine Week, part 2 of Divine Nine Week. Last week, I talked with members of the sororities, and this week, I've been speaking with members of the Divine Nine fraternities. There are 9 organizations in the NPHC, and that is how the term Divine Nine came to be. For those of you who are not familiar, the organizations that make up the Divine Nine include Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, Kappa Alpha Psi, Delta Sigma Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Sigma Gamma Rho, and we round it out with the iotas. And so tonight, for this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show, I will be speaking with a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. We're going to go ahead and get started with our Ray of Motivation moment. And for our Ray of Motivation moment on tonight, I want to ask you, are you working to make an impression? Or are you working to make an impact? Are you working to make an impression? Meaning, are you trying to impress people? Or are you working to make an impact and impact individual lives? As I think about the life and the legacy of the late Congressman John Lewis, it is very apparent from those who spoke of him today at his last service, those who have shared memories on social media over the past week. Both leaders, local, state, and nationally, have shared so many fond memories of the great, gentle giant that was Congressman John Lewis. And so I would challenge you, as you are thinking about what your work will be, whether that's community service, whether that is work in the traditional sense and what you do and how you get paid and how you earn a living, or whether that is what you do just in your off time, in play. I would challenge you to figure out whether you are truly making an impact or what your intentions are. If your intentions are to make an impact, or if your intentions are to impress. And that is today's Ray of Motivation moment for this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show. So, Edwin, love this memory you are sharing about Congressman John Lewis. Yes, he was always very gracious and very humble. I know I had a chance to meet him on a few occasions and be in the same room, and that was the spirit that I always saw him exhibit. So I am excited to welcome my guest on tonight. As I mentioned earlier, he is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He holds a degree in business administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. If you know me, you know why I had to emphasize that the. And he also has an MBA from Harvard Business School. Many people got to know my guest as he worked his way on Wall Street in front of 20 million people each week as a part of The Apprentice. Please help me welcome Kwame Jackson. Kwame, thank you so much for being on the Angela Ray Show tonight.
Hey, thank you, Angela, and let's go Tar Heels.
Let's go Tar Heels. Exactly. I don't know what the Tar Heels will be doing this season. Just, it looks like there's,
It's a tough
Yeah,
one.
it's definitely a tough one. A small schedule has been released, but who knows if we will actually be able to execute that schedule.
Yeah, everything virtual.
Yes, and it has been a challenge. So, in my rare motivation moment tonight, I was talking about Congressman John Lewis. And of course, you probably, like me and so many around the world, got a chance to see his homegoing service on today. He was a member of the Divine Nine as well. What thoughts and what memories do you have from Congressman Lewis?
Well, I have a very personal memory from Congressman John Lewis. And let me say, obviously, I was deeply touched by his passing, deeply touched by the service, and then obviously deeply touched by what his impact has been on America. But my personal memory goes all the way back to 2012 when the Democratic National Convention was here in Charlotte, North Carolina, my hometown. And so I came home to be part of that process and to be part of the DNC. I had done the same in Boston and been a speaker on behalf of the North Carolina delegation. And when I came home to in 2012 to the DNC in Charlotte, at my high school, East Mecklenburg High School, where I graduated from way back in '92, they had an event where Congressman Lewis was speaking. And they asked me to come in and introduce him and meet him. And I was able to take some great pictures and have conversation with him. And so I have a very personal interaction and warm moment where I would just really just stood in awe of everything that he stood for, the words that he shared that day in high school, and then just thinking back how that connects to the civil rights movement and continues that kind of long line of equality for us all. So he is a ray for us all of hope and equality and diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely. We were just talking about, what the Tar Heels may be doing this year and that we may be watching it virtually because of the pandemic. So, what have you been doing during this time? I know normally, you're an international speaker, you're on stages all around the world,
Mm-hmm.
but my hunch is you haven't been on as many planes in the past few months.
I've been parked like everybody else. What's funny is in the midst of COVID, I was 1 month away from completing a 1 year global sabbatical. In December of 17, I decided to create a global leadership sabbatical where I was going to visit 50 countries, write a book, do a documentary, and really focus on leadership differences in these countries around diversity and inclusion, multicultural communities, and how I see politics and real life affecting those communities. So I was able to get to 40 countries in 11 months. And obviously traveling in pockets of 2 to 3 months and then coming back and working with clients in the States and then 2 to 3 months. But I spent the first 3 to 4 months in Southeast Asia. I came back for a while, and then I was in Central America. I was in Eastern Europe for a block. And then my final block was West Africa. And right after I came back from West Africa, I had one more block to go where I was basically going to white space countries that I'd never been to before on my personal journey. And that was East Africa, was going to be my last block. And I was literally at the airport planning to go to either Kenya or Tanzania from New York when all the African countries essentially started banning Americans. And so as we see, I looked at a map just today that Americans are only allowed in 2 countries in the world this summer, Mexico and Turkey. So I'm here. I haven't been able to complete my global leadership sabbatical, but the time that I've spent out, about 90% complete, has been great. And I'm really going to package that into a leadership experience that I'm going to share with people, both as a speaker and a book, but then also taking people on individual customized leadership sabbaticals that'll be small venues of what I experienced myself in various locales once the world opens back up again.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, business is your thing, but business has not been good for every industry during the pandemic. For those small mom and pop shops that have been hit hard by these tough economic times, what type of advice would you offer someone, kind of some general advice to survive this time?
Yeah, it's really, really tough right now. Most of us have lived through the Great Recession. I know that was tough for me, and I took some big economic personal hits, as well as with my clients as we kind of struggled through '09, 10, and 11. And we were really just kind of getting our feet wet again, maybe about 5 years after that, when now we're in the midst of, the COVID second Great Recession that some people are calling possibly a Great Depression. Just today, the numbers came out for third quarter GDP, and they fell off a cliff. I think it was a 32% decline versus previous quarters, which is one of the most drastic drops in history. And so we're really living in tough times, and people are struggling to figure out how to be creative, how to reinvent their business model. We're doing podcasts, we're doing all kinds of things. Zoom speeches with our clients is one of the things that I'm doing versus in-person speaking. I'm also doing a lot more consulting now with my clients virtually as a strategic consultant to help them with the brand direction of where they're going. I'm actually working on a project regarding John Lewis right now, so I'm very excited about that, and we'll tell you more about that in the broadcast. But my recommendations for mom and pop businesses who are struggling through right now is find a way to be creative. Find a way to reinvent your restaurant, your laundromat, your dry cleaner, your office supply business, whatever it may be, and figure out where clients are hurting and how you can kind of pivot, because we always have been a pivot people. I always say how you can pivot to be successful during this time. So I know one of the major things that small business struggle with is liquidity and the ability to have that runway of cash and cash flow to continue to be successful. And I know PPP loans have been hard for small businesses of color to obtain. And so I think this is the time to really buckle down on your cash, make sure that you know where it's going, be really strategic about how you deploy it. And if you can, see if you can get some extensions from your banks for additional lines of credit so that you can kind of weather out this storm, because it is going to be a lot longer than we think. But I think this is a time to be creative and pivot.
Now, for those people who, let's say they don't have a business, maybe they're out of work and they're thinking, okay, this may be a great time to start a business, but I don't know where to start. Are there some industries that you think are doing better than others in terms of people starting businesses right now?
Yeah, I mean, everything in the digital space is actually booming because people are obviously migrating, just like you and I, online and everything we do because of social distancing. One of the projects that I'm working on is in the esports space. And I can't say more than that, but basically, esports is virtual gaming that you see all of our kids doing, all of the young folks in Gen Z, and how they interact constantly online. It's like, in fact, I was in a barbershop today and I was sitting across from probably a 14-year-old, and literally as he was getting his hair cut, he never looked up from his phone. He was gaming as he got his fade, as he got his outline, just steady focused on his phone. I was like, this is the way you get your haircut for, 14-year-olds today, because they're glued to their phone. And so I think anything in the digital space is going to be exciting. I think esports is there. I think any kind of Zoom room conferencing that you can do, whether you're going to do hosting for businesses to actually host their stuff in your cloud and do like a cloud computing business, or if you're actually going to be a person who creates content and puts that out into the digital universe. So if you think about what you're good at, what your passion project has always been, whether it's, baking or home fix up or, swimming or fitness, whatever it might be, this is a time to kind of encapsulate that business and put it online and put it out there and think about ways you can engage consumers. I have a friend who's actually a Tar Heel, and she lives in New York, and I'll leave her nameless, but she basically started kind of interim summer camp daycare for kids in her building. So she has a kid, and she was like, what if I got 5 or 6 other kids who are struggling through the summer? Their parents are busy. They're pulling out their hair, trying to get the kids out of the house. What if I kind of congregated all those kids and not just did babysitting, but basically made a summer camp curriculum for the kids in my building, charge each parents weekly, and then scale that up building by building, friend by friend. And that was just something that came to her that was right in her lane. And I just think it's a great solution to way it look at, what am I struggling with? What do I see other people struggling with? Because every business is centered around a problem and how you go about solving and creating that. So I think that's a great creative solution that a lot of people could do.
Absolutely. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, you were a part of one of the major reality business shows, The Apprentice, the very first season.
Yeah.
How has that, being a part of that show, impacted what you do now? And particularly, how have you been able to separate yourself in some ways politically?
Yeah, so for me, The Apprentice was 16 years ago. So it actually premiered in 2004. We filmed it in 2003. I was in the first season. So obviously it's become a global franchise, but being on the first season, it's even longer into history, right? And so for me, I was working on Wall Street at the time at Goldman Sachs. I took the leap of faith to go on the show, didn't know what it was, didn't know what the blueprint for reality TV was. We were one of the pioneers, and we set up that blueprint. So after that, it was all about branding myself as an entrepreneur. I was able to do that, start my own business, start my own consulting firm where I specialize in strategic consulting for diversity and inclusion. multicultural marketing and leadership development. So I've had clients like Pepsi and Google and Verizon and a number of other Fortune 500s where I consult in those spaces, but also leveraging the media platform to become a professional speaker and start telling some of my business stories from my time at Procter Gamble or my time at Goldman Sachs, or even my time as an entrepreneur where I started a men's apparel business called Crimson by Kwame, which was men's apparel ties that we sold into Macy's, Dillard's, JCPenney, and Belk in about 150 markets nationwide. So once again, I think it's the ability to pivot, to see, where the creative opportunities lie, and then to inject yourself and your ideas and your energy in those lanes, and really try and drive it home. So The Apprentice was a great platform. It was very long ago, but as far as separation, especially as a political commentator, I've never been a fan of the president and what he stood for from the time he announced he was running. Donald Trump was a business boss in terms of being on the show, and we actually had a very cordial and fair relationship up until the time when he has started to basically throw darts at President Obama about the birtherism. And once he started to do that, I felt like it was also a personal indictment against me, because I thought, okay, if this man is being questioned for his background and his pedigree and his grades, what was it that you thought about me when I was on the show, and how do you perceive other minority professionals? So I took it as a very personal indictment, and that was probably 2010, 2011, and started to distance myself from there. And so once he announced for president in 2014 or so, I came out firmly against, what I thought the country needed to stand for. Did a big CNN press conference, have been a political commentator in the space since, and really just trying to bring the country back to unity, back to basics, back to equality, and all the things that I think that the president doesn't stand for. So yeah, it's been pretty easy to distance, because for me, it's about, I always say we're from the South. It's like acting like you have a little home training, right? My grandma used to say that. And I feel like I have a lot of home training. I have a lot of people who believed in me and wanted to see me successful. And so I want to make sure that I do those people justice.
All right, we have a question, I think it's for both of us, from a fellow Tar Heel, Edwin Evans, who's a big supporter of the show, by the way.
Awesome.
I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, should I read it there?
Sure, go ahead.
This question is for both of you. You have gained fame and success since your days in Blue Heaven. What has been the biggest surprise on your journey? Edwin is a big supporter. He's a personal supporter of mine. He's a supporter of your show. He's one of the best Tar Heels out there. So, Edwin, this is to you, brother. We appreciate you as a Tar Heel. I think for me, one of the biggest motivations for me in terms of how I've looked at my success since the show is realizing that The Apprentice for me was a floor, not a ceiling, right? And so it's a starting point and a platform to build from. And it's about kind of standing in front of that experience rather than standing behind it, so that you're not always, oh, everything is The Apprentice, and then you talk about yourself after. It's about more important to stand in front of that experience and use it as a platform to continue to build. And so for me, it's about realizing that opportunity was great, but being able to build on it from there into new opportunities, new directions, and being creative of how you make those links. So it's been a great journey. It really has. It's been ups and downs, but it's been a great journey.
So I guess I go next. I'm not used to answering questions on the show. I ask all the questions. I think probably the biggest surprise for me on my journey has been the number of people that I looked up to that now we're on the same level. We are now colleagues, particularly watching television growing up, specifically being on the entertainment side, being such a fan of individuals and watching them and becoming colleagues and feeling that respect, not just because we're on the same show or we're on the same lot, but actually feeling that mutual respect when we get a chance to work together. That's been both humbling and it's been very motivating at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've had some great experiences and stuff like that where, celebrities that I thought that were just, oh my God, would come up to me and say, saw you on the show, brother. You did a great job. You represented us well. Everybody from, Shaquille O'Neal to, Warren Moon and other sports players and entertainers. And it's been great to see people kind of have your back and know that, once again, if you carry yourself with dignity, if you do the right thing, if you act like you've been there before, that you can hold your head up high no matter what the result is and throw that rope back for other people behind you.
Now, speaking of that celebrity that you gained soon after The Apprentice, you were also named one of 50 People Magazine's most 50, what, 50 beautiful, most beautiful people.
Me, who, what, where?
So, what was that like?
You know, it was really funny. It was
Was everybody
obviously
sliding in your DMs at that point?
yeah. Look, there were no DMs. That was the
Oh,
thing. So I always tell people, if I was in The Apprentice during the age of social media, literally I probably would have 20 million followers, because that's how many people watched the finale. But there was no
mhm.
social media in '04 when we did it. And so when I found out about it, I was actually at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in '04, and I'd gone as a guest of one of the network broadcasters, and the editor of People Magazine was a few tables over. And when I went over and talked to her, and as everybody's just circulating in the room, and all these celebrities and news people are there, and she goes, I didn't want to tell you, but we've made a decision that we're going to put you in the magazine as one of our 50 most beautiful people. And I'm like, what? And she's like, no, we are. We think the world of you. And she said all these positive things. And I like they said, get it how you live. So I took it as it came, and I tell people that I will always have that magazine insert. I digitized it so I can show it to my grandkids and say, one day, granddad one time he had it. He might not have it now. Everything might be a little saggy now, but one day he had it. So that's a great part of the memory and the journey. And for me, it's all about stringing those pieces together and trying to create, an interesting and adventurous life.
Awesome. You have another question from a viewer.
Okay. Please share how to make the transition from face-to-face interaction to virtual digital reaching people less stressful and more effective. Oh man, that's a good question. For me, I try to traffic in what I call the currency of authenticity, right? And I tell people all the time, I'm not buying anything and I'm not selling anything. I'm just me. And my best friend, who's also a fellow Tar Heel, Dave Smith, who's class of '95 from UNC, Dave always says about me, he goes, Kwame, the best thing about you is you're the same with all people all the time. He goes, the worst thing about you is you're the same with all people all the time. And it's like if you traffic in authenticity, you are able to, I think, connect over all mediums. So you can connect in person, you can connect digitally, you can connect, email, you can connect snail mail. I just think if you are able to kind of communicate in that way from a place in your core that says, here's who I am, I'm comfortable in my skin, and being comfortable in my skin is actually a superpower, because so many people aren't. And so if
Mhm.
you're able to exude that and share that ease with other people, it brings barriers down for them. And so I think that comes across in the digital medium. I think that comes across when you meet somebody, but I would encourage people to up how they traffic in their personal authenticity and get closer to the core of who they are. And I think COVID actually is an enabler for that. Because once again, like the Great Recession, we're in the midst of people doing all kinds of introspection and trafficking, thinking about how they're doing self-actualization and how they want to grow themselves as people. So if people take time to kind of get a little zen, go inside themselves, take that mental global sabbatical like I was talking about, you'll find, I think, you get closer to who you are, and that will start to show to people as you let those layers down, and people can see that light almost coming from you. So I think that's my biggest thing. Traffic further into your authenticity.
Now, you just mentioned your frat brother, Dave Smith. Funny Dave Smith story. I was literally about to check out of a hotel in California, and I'm walking out, and he's walking in, and we're looking at each other like, Dave, Angela. He was on his way to me. We did that. Hey, how you doing? We had to roll
Like,
out,
hey,
but
what? Yeah.
just random running into people in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
The
you
Tar Heel
are,
family is
yes,
worldwide.
we're everywhere. We are everywhere. You are a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and
Yo, yo.
I don't know if you saw that I'll show you that a little bit later. But being a part of a fraternity is very important to some people. So I'd
Mm.
love to know from your standpoint, how has being a part of a brotherhood made an impact on you?
Oh, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated is probably one of the single best decisions I ever made. And I don't know if it's the fraternity at large or just my chapter, Theta Omicron at UNC Chapel Hill, but those brothers have been so incremental to my growth as a man, as a leader, as a business professional, and just as a friend. These are people who have ridden with me essentially. They've been on the valleys and they've been on the mountaintops and they've been everywhere in between on all the major decisions in my life. They've been roommates. They've been people who've lent me money. They've been people who helped me move. They've been people who helped me through breakups. They dusted me off and picked me back up on my feet. And so those brothers have meant the world to me. They're all still my best friends. They're all great beacons of achievement. Our fundamental purpose is achievement in the fraternity of Kappa Alpha Psi. And I think when you see those beacons of achievement, whether it be a Colin Kaepernick, who's also one of our fraternity brothers from University of Nevada, leading this social justice movement, or you see an Arthur Ashe or a Bill Russell, all those folks are beacons. And you look at them and you say, one day, if I keep pushing, I'll be like them. One day, if I keep achieving, I might be like them. And even if I don't reach their status, it's like, falling short from the stars. And so I'm so proud to be part of my fraternity. I wore my crimson and cream shirt today, which is our fraternity colors. And it's just meant the world to me of achievers and a national network and even an international network of people to bounce ideas off, share with, and uplift communities.
All right, you have another question from a Tar Heel and my soror, Cassandra Caldwell.
Hey, Cassandra. Cassandra says, hi, Kwame.
Why you read it like that, though?
I can tell it says that. What made you decide to get into the diversity work? Cassandra, it's funny. I was a participant in the Inroads program, and the Inroads is a national internship program to develop and place talented minority youth in business and industry and prepare them for corporate and community leadership. I learned that mission statement when I was 17. And obviously now I'm 46. And so it's stuck with me over the years. And that was my first entree into a structured, professional mentoring and diversity program that I did all throughout high school and all throughout college, where I was able to intern with Procter Gamble, my first Fortune 500. I did that throughout UNC. And then afterwards, I was able to start full time at Procter Gamble and work for them for almost 4 years before going on to Harvard Business School. So through the Inroads program, I was kind of introduced to the D&I industry, so diversity and inclusion. But then obviously at Procter & Gamble, there was a heavy emphasis on diversity and inclusion. I was able to be part of our African-American employee resource group and work to advance promotion, retention, and recruitment at the firm. And then going on to Harvard Business School, I was part of the African-American Student Union there and that collection of great Black professionals at Harvard. And then fast forwarding at Goldman Sachs, the same thing, the Black employee group there. And so I was already kind of dyed in the wool of these groups at different stages of my journey. And so afterwards, I was able to kind of take those learnings and start really pitching different solutions, clients, and ideas. Solutions and ideas to my clients and thinking about ways that I can kind of repackage those and say, here was my experience at Procter & Gamble where we did this. Do you think this might be a fit for your corporation? So once again, it was about pivoting into that space and figuring out where's the opportunity, where's the white space so you can inject yourself and your ideas. And that's how I built my diversity and inclusion runway. I've now worked with probably 200 of the Fortune 500, everybody from Spotify to Google to Verizon. And so I love the D&I space. And it's also a personal area of passion for me. I'm very passionate about expanding the seats of inclusion for people at the table. That's very important to me because America has to realize that leadership doesn't look like one person or one type of person, or they dress this way or speak this way or talk that way. We have to realize we have leaders that come in all kinds of different dimensions, and diversity and inclusion allows people to start looking at that and saying, all right, I can see leadership in this person or that person that I normally, because of traditional archetypes, haven't thought of before. So if I can help kind of remove that veil for people, then I feel like I've done my job.
Now, when you were just talking about your fraternity brothers and how they've helped you overcome some things, I'd love to know, how have you overcome, aside from their assistance, some of those challenges that you've had to face? Because obviously you have reached a great levels of success, but no,
you are not going to succeed or do anything great or anything big if you reach for the easiest branch on the tree. If you're not reaching up high and really trying to grab that top limb that you have to jump for, then you ain't doing nothing. And for me, I'm somebody who's always stretching, always trying to hit that home run, always trying to kind of create a new experience, just because I have a very adventurous spirit about how I view life. And I think because I'm always stretching, that 9 times out of 10, I get a no, or I get a failure, or I get a stop that, versus getting a win. And so you have to have that resilience that you build up both within yourself, but through experience, just like a muscle, right? You're building that up through exercise, that every time I stumble, you know, I steal this quote from Batman of all places, but in Batman, they said, why do we fall? So that we learn to get up. It's very simple. We fall so that we can learn to get up. And I feel like resilience for me, I think is like one of the, resilience is the new black. Resilience is so sexy in people, to see that energy, to see that ability to kind of dust yourself off and keep going and be persistent and knowing that there's going to be a brighter tomorrow. That's something that I take pride in myself. And when I identify that in other people, I find that to just be a great, attractive and positive trait. And so for me, I've been able to do that through practice. I've had some failures and setbacks. Obviously, my biggest one was in front of, I always say, 30 million of my closest friends on NBC. I came in second on the first season of The Apprentice instead of first. And then, you know, even during like the Great Recession, I had some big economic setbacks, lost some clients, you know, money wasn't really right, like a lot of people. And I had to figure out, how do I start to reinvent myself as a professional? So I think you can't be afraid to fail. You have to traffic once again in that authenticity, so that you know this is part of the journey. And the more comfortable you are in terms of how you define your own success and how you measure your own life and your values, that, you know, once again, your net worth is not the same as your self-worth, right? And realizing that there's so many other things that you can place value in besides how big your car is, or how big your house is, or how big your bank account is. What's on the inside of you and the things that you're working towards in life that are important. Take stock of those things and then go after them, and don't let anybody deter you.
All right. You have another question.
Okay. Besides writing a book about my story, which I did, The Muted Cage, that's the name of it, what are other ways to monetize, or what ideas can help evolve into a stream of income? I think that's great. I think a book is a great place to start, especially as a speaker. They always say that most great speakers start with, you know, some sort of great story or book or whatever. And a book is a tangible vehicle that you can then start to market yourself, since you've already got one, as a speaker. Now we're in a different environment because everything's going to be digital, but you can take that book, start to break out the content, maybe make a website, make a live stream, make a podcast around that book, the chapters in the book, and start to book guests. And then you're going to have people coming on. You're going to build an audience like Angela's doing, and then start to monetize that audience through sponsorships, through partnerships, and ways to engage your viewers. So I think taking that book that you already have in your back pocket and figuring out different ways to inject it into different lanes of the digital economy is a smart play. And I think that's a way to start for somebody who already has a book.
Awesome. Edwin has another question for you.
Okay. Edwin, back again. Thank you, my man. What is your view of corporate responsibility in the midst of this pandemic? Oh, that's a great question. I lean hard on corporations, and I'm tough with my clients, because I basically think corporations, especially in the absence of government leadership, have a chance to lead, right? It's a vacuum. And so this is a chance for folks like McDonald's and Walmart to change their mask policy and to say, we're going to require masks in our stores, even though the federal government isn't issuing a national mask mandate. So there are opportunities to inject yourself at the corporate level, both at the diversity and inclusion side, and lead in elements of Black Lives Matter and social responsibility and racial justice as a corporation, as you build out your D&I model, but also on matters of public health in relation to COVID, because we know the two big crises that we're facing right now are COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement for racial justice. And so I think corporations can be vehicles for change beyond just focusing on the traditional focus on return to shareholders and how profitable they are. They have all kinds of stakeholders, and thinking about their stakeholders in a broader spectrum is something that I know Harvard Business School is doing now, and trying to really reinvent capitalism and think that my only stakeholder isn't my profit or my shareholder. I have a community stakeholder. I have clients as stakeholders. I have the environment as a stakeholder. I have government as a stakeholder. And I think thinking about it more holistically as a corporation is something they can do to be more effective.
All right. This isn't a question, but it is definitely a comment from your last answer.
Okay. What advice would you give someone who wants to transition from corporate America to being an entrepreneur? Ooh, look, I'm going to tell you something. You better be prepared that those checks aren't coming once a month, every month, like they always do. That's the first thing you have to understand about being an entrepreneur versus being in corporate America. I worked in corporate America for over a decade, like I said, at Procter Gamble and Goldman Sachs, and those were great companies to build my resume and to build my network and to build my brand. But then once I stepped out in 2013, 2014, I've been working for myself. I'm sorry, 2003, 2004. I've been working for myself for almost 20 years now. And I think you have to really have the ability to have a certain risk tolerance to say, what if this bill's not paid? What if, something comes a little late? What if a client is slow to pay you? Do you have the risk tolerance to know that you're going to be okay and that those around you are going to be okay if you have to provide for a family, pay a mortgage, whatever it may be? So developing that cushion of economic assets, I think, is a way to start and feel comfortable. But also the fact that, things are not going to be as smooth as a steady stream of income, as a built-in client base, as a built-in infrastructure, office, and an assistant. A lot of those things you have to figure out on the fly and learn how to, once again, pivot into the spaces to make yourself successful. So you really have to up your risk tolerance, think about how to get this mentality. I know we used to say on Wall Street, eat what you kill, which is you got to go out and hunt, and you've got to hunt for new clients. You got to hunt for new opportunities. Otherwise, you're not going to eat. And so you've got to have that kind of eye of the tiger hunger about getting yourself paid, about building your business, about building your networks of clients so that you can be successful, because it's not going to be handed to you. And then being able to really adjust as we go through economic downturns like we have right now.
All right. This was the comment that I wanted to share with you a minute ago.
Okay.
So, thanks for that question, Cassandra. It was a good one.
Kwame, you are a great source of ideas, encouragement, and have increased my hope. Thank you. I am in the hope business. And so I take a lot of pride in that. I tell people, they're like, oh, what kind of business are you? Are you a speaker, a consultant? I was like, no, I'm in the inspiration business. And that's where I think fundamentally, if you traffic in authenticity, I think if you are okay and comfortable in your skin and you allow others to see the light that they have within them, that's why I'm on the earth. I've decided that. That's my purpose. I'm here to kind of illuminate that for others. And the more you can kind of make a business and a mission around it, I think it just becomes easier and easier. And I feel that way now that I'm getting deeper into my 40s. It's like, whoa, it's like I got to figure out really what's my lane and my mission. And I think I've got that part figured out. And now it's just double down and run with it. But thank you for that compliment. And I'll continue to do what I do. And I can encourage you to continue to do what you do.
See, I didn't even know I was going to have a hope dealer on my show tonight.
Hope dealer. Got that hope. I got that hope, y'all.
So as we get ready to wind down, I do have another question for you. Thinking about, you were just talking about the two things that we have going on right now, which are the pandemic as well as the fight for racial equality. Yep. What do you think the long-term legacy will be for our members, our Divine Nine members, particularly as we look at so many of them on the front lines? Many of them are our senators. They are our mayors. They are leaders in our businesses. And they're on the forefront in so many different ways. So what do you think our legacy is going to be?
Yeah, think about the legacy already. Martin Luther King, Alpha Phi Alpha. John Lewis, Phi Beta Sigma. Colin Kaepernick, Kappa Alpha Psi. Hakeem Jeffries, Kappa Alpha Psi, Kamala Harris, Alpha Kappa Alpha. So I think there's all kinds of people who've already set the platform of achievement, and now it's time for us to take it even higher. The Divine Nine needs to sit in the White House. That's why I was such a big Kamala fan and continue to be. Like one of us needs to sit in the White House and take all that legacy of achievement, of cultural enrichment, of uplifting our communities through a commitment to service. That mentality, I think, needs to be injected into the White House. So I think for us, it's about pushing for higher offices, for collectively raising the bar for all of us together, so that if you have a fraternity brother or a sorority sister that needs an opportunity and you know about a job or you know about a potential client, pick up the phone, send them an email, send them a DM and say, hey, man, I heard about this client and I think you'd be a great fit. And the people who have done really great by me in the fraternity are people who've plugged me in, whether it's been to be a speaker or with a new client or a new opportunity. And so I think the more you can do that, we'll go back to UNC, the more you can pass the ball, pass that rock so that other people can score. That's how, we're going to uplift each other as the Divine Nine. And then as a group of people who can then uplift our entire race. And I think that's really important to me as a diversity inclusion professional. And it's important to the legacy of our organizations, because all the people who founded our organizations they wanted to see where we are today. They would never imagine that we would be this far. And now it's our turn to take it another 100 years, if not more, and raise that bar further. So we're out there, and I'm very proud of what we're doing.
Well, Kwame's Instagram and his Twitter are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Anything else that you want to share about upcoming projects before we wrap it up for tonight?
I got to be a little cagey about it, but I'm working on a project regarding John Lewis that I'm very excited about. We're doing a national rollout with a group I started with George Lynch, the famous Carolina
Yeah,
Tar Heel.
he was on the show recently.
Yep, George and Tracy Pennywell. We started a group called HBCU Heroes, and I lead corporate partnership for that group. That group is all about leveling the playing field for HBCUs with Division I schools, particularly in student athletes and athletics. So if you think about UNCF or Thurgood Marshall College Fund, we're doing the same thing for student athletes. And we've done a lot of great events, and we're working on a John Lewis release event right now for his documentary, Good Trouble, his biopic. So we'll be leading the national HBCU effort for that. We're very excited about it. And you'll hear some big things coming out on that. Also, I'm doing some stuff in the podcast and digital television space. Hopefully a show that will be launching later this year, and also in the traditional television space. So I've been busy as a consultant. It's funny that other opportunities that may have dried up in the physical world, they boomed in the digital world. And so the opportunity to do some things in media, the opportunity to be a consultant with client on various projects have really picked up pace, especially with the movement for racial justice. And now, diversity and inclusion is sexy, and Black Lives Matter is sexy. And so it's about taking advantage of those opportunities while that window is open, and working with various corporations and partners to be successful around that.
Now, here is one final question. I was about to wrap up. We talked a little bit about this, but I didn't ask that last part. So I'm gonna let Cassandra ask this last part.
With the heat. All right, Cassandra. A lighthearted question. I see that you were on People Magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People and 50 Hottest Bachelors. Yeah, I was on 2 lists. Yep. What was that like? Are you still a bachelor? Well, I am a bachelor. I've been in long-term relationships. I was married at one point, but I'm still single right now, and enjoying dating. I think that there are lots of great and dynamic people out there. But one day I'll settle into that life partner role and hopefully be in that old folks home telling great stories from UNC. And so I enjoy my life. I try to, like I said, be authentic. I try to engage in adventures and experiences, and I want to make sure that when it's all said and done, I don't feel like I missed out on anything, and I just had a great journey. And so I'm very, very thankful.
Well, that is a great answer and a great way to end our show. Kwame Jackson, thank you so much for being on the Angela Ray Show tonight. Thank you for sharing so much wisdom. I definitely appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so it definitely was a joy to have a fellow Tar Heel and a fellow Crimson and Cream. I wore this for the Crimson and Cream.
See, there we go. Crimson and Cream, Crimson and Cream, TKO. So we appreciate you, Delta Sigma Theta. Everybody on my lines, mom was a Delta. That's one of the most amazing facts. You didn't know. There you go. So thank you, ladies of DST.
Wow. All right. I did not know that. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. And I look forward to seeing what you all are going to do, the project that you and George Lynch are working on, because he mentioned something about that to me as well when he was on the show a little while ago. So yeah, can't wait to see.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. Go Tar Heels. Thank you. And please check out HBCU Heroes and my Instagram there, Kwame Inc. Thank you, Angela Ray.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
You too.
All right. That's it for this Thursday night edition of the Angela Ray Show. As always, I would like to remind you of Ray of Motivation number 54. Cleaning a mirror does not change the person who is reflected in it. Until next time, I encourage you all to go out and be the change. Have a great evening.